think a game that we got to talk about, I think there's two games that we got to talk about. Baseball's over. So that means this podcast is folding in about an hour. Jack, Peter, Aram. Real talk, we might actually be the only podcast that's more excited for the offseason than we are the actual MLB regular season, just because we get to play the what-if game for 5 months, which is electric. Just baseball show, Monday, November 7th. The Astros have won the World Series. We're going to talk about the Astros taking down the Phillies in 6. Pete, you had Phillies in 7. Arm and I had Astros in 7, so we can all suck eggs. And then we're going to talk about the first $100 million deal for a relief pitcher. But we also, before we get to Edwin Diaz, want to talk about some things that are going on within the Astros, where it is paradise, it is a dynasty, but somehow they don't function in this dynastic way. But first and foremost, Yordan Alvarez hit a ball 450 feet dead center that left the bat 113 in a lefty-lefty matchup. Again, splits don't really matter to him. He's a fucking freak, is he not?
Yeah, that wasn't at 450 feet. My StatCast brain model had that around 550.
Yeah.
That was thunderous. I mean, that's about as thunderous as a home run can get. You're coming in at 100 from Jose Alvarado, and it just leaves the yard in 0.5 seconds. But are we going to be the Monday morning quarterbacks of why they went to Jose Alvarado?
No.
I understand it's a lefty-lefty matchup. Runner on first and third. You want to bring in your best lefty in that situation, but Jose Alvarado in these situations hasn't been the guy to lock it down for them. I understand possibly going to a reliever there, but is Jose Alvarado the guy who has not looked as good and was the least rested? Jack, you're shaking your head. Yes, I would have kept in Wheeler. I know I would have kept in Wheeler there. He looked fine to me. And the problem with Yordan is the high heat. And Zach Wheeler was throwing 98, 99. He looked perfectly fine to me. I know it's easy to say that after the fact that you would have taken him out, but I know at the time I had a pit in my stomach when he came into the game. And I knew at the time I wouldn't have taken him out. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't know if the problem was going to Alvarado as much as I think the problem, at least where I could see a little bit more of the pushback, is, pulling Wheeler there. I didn't think he looked necessarily bad. They got a couple guys on, and that was that. But he was only at 70 pitches. I would have liked to see him try to work out of that, but I get the short leash in an elimination game at the end with your back against the wall. Alvarado's been their guy since the second half started. And I mean, he's been one of the most dominant relievers in baseball. Even though he looked a little bit shaky in the last outing or two, you got to kind of fall on that sword. If he's not going to get that out for you, then you lose the World Series. It is what it is. Sir Anthony Dominguez wasn't razor sharp after that either, who's also been their guy. So again, it kind of just is what it is. The one side I do really kind of think about is Wheeler being able to maybe get out of that himself. That was clearly the Wheeler that we've become used to, which was the 97 to 99 Wheeler who can paint and really blow it by you, but also finesse you. And that was the surprising part to me, is I thought it was a little bit of a quick yank to him, but it's because they really like the Alvarado Yordan matchup, which he took care of Yordan most of the time before that. And you talk about high fastball being a blue zone. No one throws the high fastball better on that entire team than Jose Alvarado. So you could see what they were thinking. That was the method that worked for them to get there, going to Alvarado in the middle of the game. But unfortunately, he just tugged it down and it was middle.
Yeah. Everybody makes mistakes pitching wise. You throw 100 pitches in a game as a starting pitcher, you're going to miss your spot at least 4 times. I promise you that. Relievers, you're going to miss your spot once every couple outings. And Alvarado, here's the thing about him and Sir Anthony Dominguez in the back half of the season. They didn't really miss their spots that much, but obviously they're human beings, so they're going to miss. I didn't have a problem with the decision being Alvarado. Just because, and we talked about it earlier this series, they are co-aces in the bullpen, right? Like I said, Alvarado was the best guy in the Philly bullpen. Peter, I think you said Sir Anthony Dominguez was the best arm in the Philly bullpen. In reality, you can go to either. And I would prefer the lefty that throws the fastball at the top of the zone, with high heat at the top of the zone being Yordan's kryptonite. But high heat, that's a dick shot. any of the best hitters in baseball can send that into oblivion, and he did that. As the Wheeler thing, I don't think it's comparable to like the Blake Snell thing. I think Wheeler, yes, was he cruising, but once you get to runners at the corners and you're in bottom six, in a must-win game, in an elimination game, I understand why Rob Thompson felt pressure to make a change there. If that wasn't an elimination game, I bet you Rob leaves Wheeler in to see Alvarez. But I mean, their backs are literally against the wall. I think that definitely had something to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm looking up just because they were up 1-0. I'm kind of just on Baseball Savant looking up just like ground ball rates, because all they really needed there, they just had to get the ground ball because they were up 1-0 after that Kyle Schwarber home run. Yeah, Jose Alvarado definitely had a higher ground ball rate. I don't know. I guess in the moment, I thought, I don't want to take out Wheeler. Look how good he looks. I mean, when Wheeler is on and throwing with that velocity, I'll take Wheeler against any hitter in baseball. And Jose Alvarado, over the full postseason, he has been one of the best Phillies bullpen arms. But in that World Series, he was really kind of the only guy to allow runs. And he came in those exact spots and already blew it. So in an elimination game, when Wheeler looks that good, I just would have stuck with Wheeler. I understand that if you were going to go to the bullpen, Alvarado was probably the decision because he has gotten ground balls. He is the lefty-lefty matchup. He does have that high fastball velocity, which Yordan has been prone to striking out against. But I just had a pit in my stomach. I felt like you knew it was coming there with Alvarado. So, but again, Monday morning quarterback. It's not like the Phillies then scored because it was a 3-run home run. Phillies could come back, right? They could have, it's 3-1. The game's not over, but it did appear to be over. And then it ended up ending 4-1. So what if Wheeler gave up a double there to Yordan? Because it's Yordan, So
and that's the thing too. I mean, it's like they scored 1 run and they didn't really threaten much otherwise. So it's like you're not going to win scoring 1 run against the Houston Astros. It's going to be extremely difficult. And the one thing with Wheeler is I felt like in that spot, it wasn't one of those where it's like this guy's losing it. Like, yeah, he drills Maldonado, which sucks because that's the last guy on earth you want to drill. But then he gets Altuve out, and then Pena has another one of those ridiculous like fight the ball into center field hits, and that's it, right? Like that's the jam. Like that's the indication of this guy needs to go. That was the only thing for me is I thought it was a bit of a quick yank, but that's how they were doing it. And that's how they got there. And testament to Yordan too. Cause I mean, this guy was lost really beyond the World Series and the championship series. And aside from that home run off of Robbie Ray, it really didn't look like himself most of the postseason.
2 of them, first 2 games of the ALDS, right? It was the backside homer in game 2, but it was the walk-off in game 1. After that, nothing.
And they were talking about it in the broadcast about how he was tinkering like before the game under the tunnel, had like a bad batting practice session, like all those things that really sound brutal and not something you'd expect from one of the more pure hitters in the game. So for him to be lost like that, but still not miss the mistake, it's a testament to Yordan Alvarez and how he can stay the course. And I mean, that ends up being the difference in the game. And that's a guy that's slumping and you felt like looked lost, and all of a sudden 450 dead center, and that's that.
Did you guys see the Twitter army of umpires after Maldonado for leaning in? I don't think he leaned in. I think he just didn't get out of the way, but you're trying to work your way on base. I don't know if you guys saw that all over Twitter. People are like, the Astros are cheating again. The Astros didn't even cross my mind.
I didn't even, I thought he just got hit.
When I first watched it, I was like, yep. I mean, you just didn't get out of the way, but you don't have to get out of the way. You're trying to get on base, especially if you're Martin Maldonado. I don't think he leaned into it, but I just wanted to kind of soften that for, any potential listeners being like, he leaned into it. In my opinion, didn't look like it at all to me.
No, I think we're good. Here's the thing, man. Yordan's 25 years old. Kyle Tucker's 25 years old. Jeremy Pena is 25 years old. Christian Javier is 25 years old. Luis Garcia is 25 years old. This team is like this factory, this big bad machine. It's fair to call them a dynasty, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's
2
super
chips.
fair. And the way they did it this year, right? So you've got Justin Verlander at the front end of the rotation. He finally got his first World Series win. But I mean, we've talked about it, man. We've got Framber Valdez, who signed for $10,000 as 21-year-old international free agent. You've got Christian Javier, who signed for not much more than that, right? How much did Javier sign for?
Like 20 something, I believe, too.
Yeah.
10 or 20,000.
Yeah, stupid, man. And then you've got Lance McCullers, who literally just spins breaking balls every single fucking pitch. Like he does not throw fastballs to lefties. That's just not what happens. And then you've got guys like Jeremy Pena. Dusty Baker said it best, a Dominican dude that went to the University of Maine. You've got Yordan Alvarez, who was an afterthought for the LA Dodgers in a trade with the Astros. Like really,
Josh Fields, remember the name? Like that
exactly.
Still blows my mind. Still blows my mind.
You've got like really the only guys with legitimate prospect intrigue on this team were Bregman and Kyle Tucker, right? This team, they develop so stupidly well, and they let each guy develop into their own unique character. I mean, we talk about Tampa. A lot of Tampa pitchers look the exact same, right? A lot of Guardians hitters look the exact same. The thing that's so unique about the Houston Astros is their development is second to none, and they all develop in their own unique way. Christian Javier and Framber Valdez, their pitch arsenal, the way they attack hitters, could not be more different. Yeah. And here they are both thriving. This team has figured something out, and that's why they're a dynasty.
They just get the most out of their guys, man. It's like you said, like to have the Framber turn into the best ground ball pitcher in the modern era, while you have somebody like I think the craziest part about it is that they can preach different things. Like you said, you have the Rays that preach the slider, that really teach the slider, and find those guys that all throw from different arm slots. And that's like what they do. That's their one differing factor is we have guys who throw weird in different ways. But when you have Javier high spin, like you said, and then being able to have Framber with the bowling ball is just silly. And then you look at what they have too. We talk about the Braves and always celebrate the way they have guys locked up. And I don't think anybody really compares to what they have in terms of locking up your core. But when you look at the Astros, at least for the next 3+ years, Jose Altuve is not going anywhere. Yordan Alvarez is not going anywhere. Bregman's not going anywhere. Neither is McCullers. Presley's even locked up. And you go even to the younger pitchers, of course. Those guys aren't going anywhere. They're still in their, pre-arb or early arb part of their contract. And then even the Luis Garcias of the world, those guys are still early in their arbitration as well. So, I mean, this team is going to be steady for a very, very long time. And I don't really see them slowing down anytime soon. Even Kyle Tucker has several years of arbitration as well. I mean, this team is really in a great spot for sustainable success, which they've already been doing.
Yeah, really? To your point, like the Braves, they're still up there in payroll because they have a lot of guys and they are paying a decent amount of guys. But the Astros just won the World Series and they have a lower payroll than the Braves do, who are known for their deals, right? And the Astros are right there, and they were the ones to win the World Series this year. And they won 106 games. And it's not like the Braves have been there and they've been close, but the Astros have now been there for a longer period of time, and they still have the lower payroll. I just wanted to add that too. It's when I looked it up, I was like, the Astros have to be above the Braves, right?
No, because who are they really paying right now? Bregman, Altuve, and
yeah. So for next year, you've got Altuve at $29 million, Bregman at $30.5. Yordan's only making
worth it. I mean, they're completely worth it, right?
Yeah. Jordan's only making 7.8. Presley's making 14, but I mean, he was phenomenal all year. And
McCullers is getting paid,
at 16.
Right?
McCullers is making 16, and
worth
then
it.
17 a year, or really 18 a year for the next 3 years after that. That'll be interesting to see how that ages with his fragility, to see, I mean, if it's going to be worth it for 18 million in 2026. But if that's your one bad contract, a starter who's not always available at less than 20 million, I think you're in pretty good shape. And that's the thing, is I'm interested to see what they do with, maybe a pre-arb deal for Pena, maybe a deal with Tucker to leverage those arbitration years, and they probably will. And they'll really be in control for a long time of a lot of these guys. I think we could see them hand out a lot of, Alex Anthopoulos type contracts over the next couple years between Framber, Javier, you got Pena, and of course Tucker as well. I'm really fascinated to see what they're going to do this offseason.
Okay, so before we heap praise on the Phillies, I want to stay there. You're fascinated as to what they're going to do contractually this offseason. Who's going to make those decisions, Aram? Yeah. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. John Heyman with the New York Post, he wrote this big thing about this perceived rift between Dusty Baker and James Click. James Click being very analytically driven, the GM of the Astros. Dusty Baker not being as analytically driven, but obviously all the guys love Dusty. It feels like Click is the first one to go, as opposed to the 73-year-old World Series champion, Dusty Baker. My thought is simple. They have figured out a way to make peace and win a World Series. Do not fuck that up.
Yeah.
Don't. If James Click is gone, not only is that a terrible move for the Astros, but my mind starts to race like, who's safe in their GM or president of baseball operations job? If that guy's
Brian Cashman appears to be safe no matter what.
Yes, exactly. But I was thinking the untouchables here are Friedman, Eric Neander, but Click wouldn't want to go there, and Anthopoulos. You got guys that are just they're not going anywhere, like Farhan Zaidi or like a Ross Atkins or, there are a bunch of names like that.
Dombrowski. He ain't going anywhere now.
Yeah, Dombrowski's not going anywhere. Like Preller's not going anywhere. But I'm thinking if I'm an owner and I see what James Click just did and I've got a middling GM, like if I'm the Boston Red Sox, I mean.
Here's how I thought about it too. I think the riff is good. I think we even talk about it on the show, right? The combining of analytics plus the baseball feel that Dusty Baker brings, it's almost like a perfect match that, in some situations where some teams, they rely so heavily on the analytics that they lose their feel for the game. They lose their feel for playing the right guy and who's hot just because the ex-Woba is a little bit higher third time through the order of this lefty-righty matchup versus this is just our dude right now. I think that mesh is what makes the Astros so deadly, because you look at the Dodgers, you look at some other teams like that who are so analytically driven, who get a lot of flack for making the decision that doesn't make a lot of sense because it doesn't feel like it has a lot of feel in it. But the Astros just always press the right buttons. But then again, they are analytically driven. So I think that riff is almost makes the team better.
Well, yeah, if it wasn't a rift. If they were meshing, then it would work. The problem is they're not getting along, and it's like me or him. Otherwise, I'm with you. I agree. That's why they just won the World Series, is because of that balance.
Yeah.
But and that's what Jack was saying is like, don't mess this up. You have a really good balance here of analytics and a guy who's been around the game basically longer than anyone that's still in it, at a professional level for a team. If they're that bad, and I think what really ended up disrupting it was Click going out to get guys at the deadline that Baker was like, great, I'm glad you got him. We'll use him if we need him. And then Trey Mancini barely got used. Even Vasquez's usage was not that high, I think, relative to what Click wanted when he gave up prospects for him. And I think that really kind of added to the rift. I think they can find a way to work this out. Winning the World Series makes everything easier. And I really hope, here's my one thing, Jack, before you chime in on this. The only thing I could think is if Jim Crane sees how they've been able to bounce back without Lunhow and say, well, maybe we don't need, it doesn't matter who the GM is. This is my organization and I know how to run it. And, I'll put somebody else in that spot and we'll win another one. That's my only fear is what's the ego like on Jim Crane in terms of, does he feel like he can just plug and play somebody else and let this thing ride?
We'll get to the ego on Jim Crane here in a moment, because that is a pertinent point that we just discovered yesterday, right, from passing. But yeah, just like tying a bow on the Click thing, this is a perfect mesh if it was healthy. And it's just not healthy, apparently. But winning a World Series, being champagne drunk in the locker room and having the cleanest dap up of all time, that heals a lot of relationships, I feel like. So listen, if James Click and Dusty Baker had a bro out moment drunk off their asses in the locker room or on the plane. Actually, no, they were in Houston, so they didn't fly anywhere. But if they had a bro out moment in the locker room, you can have this like come to God moment where you say, listen, I think one way, you think another way. This was mutually beneficial. And let's put our differences aside. I got Mancini and Vasquez at the deadline. You used them sparingly, but we won the fucking World Series.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, this works. I trust you. I'm going to give you the best roster possible. You push the right buttons, and let's go win another. Because that's the end goal. The end goal is not for Trey Mancini to play 60 games in an Astros uniform. The end goal is for Trey Mancini and the Houston Astros to win the World Series. Like, that's the whole idea here. And you saw it in the World Series. I mean, you had Vasquez catch for who? Javier? Vasquez caught a no-hitter in the World Series. Vasquez was not on the roster in July.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to acknowledge it from both sides. I think Dusty has to swallow a little bit of his ego. Hopefully the toothpick doesn't go down the gullet. And then I think Click has to swallow a little bit of his ego. And I think winning a World Series, seeing this tangible result in front of you is the perfect elixir to do that and overcome these differences and become this healthy mesh of an analytically crazed general manager and a feel crazed manager. That's my
pretty cool. Pretty cool that Dusty Baker won a World Series, though. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, and they're sending.
I'm not sitting here thinking
to the Hall of Fame.
I'm not sitting here thinking it's another win for analytics. Thank God James Click won a World Series. Like, I'm fired up for Dusty. I am. And
that's because you're anti-analytics.
I'm actually the most pro analytics person on this podcast.
Also, every World Series, every team that wins the World Series will be a testament to analytics, though. Like, every team in the front office is very analytically driven at this point.
Here's the thing: like, analytics.
There's no one that's not.
I just like making fun of it.
Analytics and feel they're just the same. Like, good is good, right? You can point to some unbelievable analytics for the Houston Astros. Every single World Series winner, you can point to some great analytics that say, "Hey, this was the best
information."
Team in baseball.
Analytics is just information,
dude. Like, it's a way to quantify what you express qualitatively.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
That's all it is. Dusty Baker's managerial debut. This comes from C. Kamka on Twitter. Christopher Kamka.
Chris Kamka with NBC Sports Chicago, the king.
The king. Dusty Baker's managerial debut, April 6, 1993 versus the Cardinals. The St. Louis leadoff hitter, Geronimo Pena, Jeremy Pena's dad, who ended up winning the World Series MVP. I love that tweet. I mean, that fact that's just incredible. And that shows the longevity of Dusty Baker. And in 1993, he started, and now he's winning world championships still at the age of 73. Shout out Dusty Baker.
Yeah. Roster turnover here. Verlander will probably I would guess Verlander is just back on like a 3-year deal with Houston, right? They can't let that dude go.
3-year deal. I mean, probably. Right? I don't know.
It's gonna look
I think
like
he gets like a 1-1. Like a 1-1. Yeah. How much longer is he gonna do this thing? I don't know.
45. He
said that, but then I saw another interview recently where he was like, yeah, I haven't decided on my future yet. Like, whatever. So I don't know, man. Winning a World Series and pitching, through a turbulent postseason can shift your focus a little bit. I don't know. I do wonder. But I think he goes with like a 2-year deal with a third option at most. I don't see it going more than that. But I mean, what a year for him. It's been absolutely unbelievable to see. And he got the win too, which was cool. And also Kate Upton seems super cool.
Yeah.
Just all the interviews I saw, she was just pretty awesome with the way that she was handling it. And I think she said, like, who gives a shit about him finally getting his first World Series win because he's a legend. Like, obviously paraphrasing there, but pretty cool. She's right. He's a legend. And that's another thing you can check off now for Justin Verlander. Those were the two guys, Dusty, Justin, right? Both Hall of Famers, but that was like going to be the one thing, like World Series performance, winning a World Series for Dusty, like Verlander, just how is he performing in that setting? You can kind of eliminate that for both of those guys. There's no buts for either of them anymore.
No. Kate Upton, phenomenal personality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So Verlander technically off the books. Rafael Montero technically off the books.
Oh,
that guy might get $100 million deal. He might be the second reliever with a $100 million deal. He enters free agency for the first time at 32 years old. But Montero off the books. Yuli Gurriel is currently an unrestricted free agent, as is Christian Vasquez. So like, do you go for the retention move of Gurriel? Do you look to re-sign Montero, or do you make an upgrade at first base? Do you, just try and add another reliever? I'm not really sure.
Don't forget Brantley too. Brantley's gone as well.
Brantley's gone. Yeah, I forgot. I forgot. They won the World Series without Michael Brantley. I think it's tough with the Astros, but if they're going to start paying other guys, they could stick internally for first base. I'm a big fan of Yordan Diaz too, and I think that's a guy that could fit in. They've got ways that they can move guys around too. Do you like Matejevich, JJ Matejevich?
He's another option. He's swung it pretty well. Like I think when it comes to first base, they'll figure that out internally. I think I don't see them spending there, especially if they want to lock up their other guys. And who cares, right? I mean, Yuli Gurriel was bad all year. He was great in the postseason, which was awesome, and that's what makes baseball so great. You can just turn the page and be a performer in the postseason, but he wasn't good. So I think he's kind of on his way out. He sprained his MCL now too, which really sucks going into unrestricted free agency. So wish him a speedy recovery. But yeah, I could see them really just making a couple small moves and really focusing on just keeping the group together and extending some of these guys to those pre-arb type deals. They also have some other assets that I think they got to find homes for, like a Jake Myers. What's he going to do? He doesn't have a spot there anymore. Corey Lee, I look at him that they once considered him the future. Maybe he gets a shot next year, but I could see them being creative with what they do with a bunch of different guys. And David Hensley, who knows? He may keep playing his way into their future as well. If they're confident enough in him to play him in the World Series multiple times, maybe he could be a guy that ends up being that utility piece for them as well next year. And first base is a position he can play too.
Who's the number one prospect right now for the Astros? Like who's their next Jeremy Pena, the 25-year-old from Maine who won the freaking World Series MVP? Like who's next up here for the Astros?
Oof, that's a good question. Because I mean, Hunter Brown,
is now up. Yeah. Like these guys have been contributors already. So like, who is that next guy for them?
I think it's Yordan Diaz. I think it's Diaz. I think it's Yordan Diaz. He rakes, like really, really rakes. He's like, he does. he's unbelievably good. I've heard nothing but great things about the way he hits too. And
first baseman.
Well, he came up as a catcher, but he's probably gonna end up at first. And
perfect. Just slide right in for Yuli.
Like, he's a dude. No, he's a dude. He's a dude. He hit 294, 342, 587 in AAA this year. Like 16 home runs in 48 games at that level. Like the guy rakes. He's probably going to be their future there. And I know they
win
really
the Rookie of the Year next year.
Probably
Rookie of the Year next year.
Also, how in I am on Pedro Leon too. Dude might have the strongest arm in minor league baseball. I mean, he's stupid good. He can run. He can.
You like Jose Siri 2.0?
I love Jose Siri 2.0. Yeah. You know how much I love Jose Siri.
Shocker.
Imagine if he could hit.
800 OPS in AAA this year for Pedro Leon.
What does that translate to big leagues? 7?
Yeah, probably 500.
Okay.
We'll see. Or perennial MVP candidate Pedro Leon. We shall see. Quick moment to heap praise on the Philadelphia Phillies. Who the hell saw this coming? Yeah, I did. I slandered this team all year. They were on a no bet list for you, right?
Banned them. They were just too polarizing, and it was at the beginning of the year, and I mean, they were losing at the beginning of the year. That's the thing. Like this team was 22-29 before they let go of Joe Girardi. I mean, this team was not very good. They had good starting pitching at the top, but the bullpen would blow it every day. I'd watch these games. And you'd expect big leaguers to catch fly balls, but then they wouldn't. But then they just turned it all around and went 65-46 and hired Rob Thompson and then just went on this incredible run. And when we were talking at the beginning of the postseason, we all said they're going to trim the fat. And when the Phillies trim the fat, they are as good as anybody. I picked them to win a few series. I even picked them to win the World Series, kind of as a crazy upset, but you guys were right in the sense that the Astros just simply outlasted them. Like even when the Astros weren't playing their best baseball, like the Astros on the road in this postseason had like a team OPS like 570. I mean, Miles Straw had a 564 OPS this year, and they still won 2 games in Citizens Bank. Like that's just how good they were. They didn't have to play their best baseball. Like I didn't even think they were playing their best baseball against the Yankees, and they swept them. Like they were worlds better. And I thought the Phillies had a little bit more magic in them. I thought that offense would be there, but the pitching was too much. And like, we're talking about bullpen guys, whether they're going to bring them back or not. How about another guy like Brian Abreu? Dude, that was like the best relief World Series I've ever seen.
Yeah,
he was unhittable. When he came in, it was done.
I'm glad you brought that up. There's one thing that stood out to me more than anything ever. And I was sitting watching the game with a couple buddies, and we watched Schwarber go square to bunt.
Yes.
With two strikes against Abreu after he just turned 96 into a rocket into right field.
I audibly laughed out loud when I saw that. I was like, it's actually over. I mean, what?
That's literally him saying, I don't feel comfortable at all. And it's funny, I was watching that with my buddy Griffin, who plays in the minor leagues, and I was like, how fucked mentally do you have to be to try that in that spot after you homered? And he goes, basically have to be looking at an aspirin pill. Like that, like you have to literally not be seeing the baseball to try that. And he tried to bunt it. It was a ball. He could have pulled back and we would have been like, whoa, what is he doing? But it's a ball. It was at his shoulders. He tried to bunt it. And literally, like, professional baseball player right next to me saying, that's a different level of uncomfortable for you to try that as a power hitter. Like there's no world where you want to try that. Like, and that really spoke to me. I look at Trent Grisham trying it in a different way when he was as lost as possible, but I've never seen a guy try it in the same game that he homered with two strikes. I've seen guys try it like, oh, you think I'm going to homer again? Shift me hard. I'll surprise you and show you everything I got in my bag. This was not that. Testament to Brian Abreu and how freaking gross he is. What a development that guy's been.
Guys, also, Ryan Stanek had one of the lowest ERAs in the regular season. They barely used him. They're like, we could use him in the fifth or sixth inning if we wanted to. Just goes to show, like, if you put Ryan Presley on any other team, which is like, he's not in the Astros bullpen anymore, would it have mattered when he's one of the best bullpen arms in the entire game? Like, that's the thing. They can mix and match anybody they want.
Yeah.
The Phillies, on the other hand, relied on a couple of different guys. And when those couple of different guys didn't show up and weren't elite, it was almost over because we knew that the Phillies just weren't scoring against this team. And Framber, man, dude, I mean, this guy is just, you can't score. You can't put the ball in the air. It's almost impossible. I was literally thinking to myself, and I tweeted out, like, sometimes I think Framber is the best pitcher of all time. Like, sometimes I think it's literally impossible to score against this man.
It's pretty impossible. What I will say, though, is the approach on Framber, which is easier said than done, is like work the middle of the field. Don't try and pull it. If you pull it, you're going to go over the top of it. And it's really hard to do because of the way that he paints the bottom of the zone and the way he works that bottom region. But the guy that had the best swing against Framber, and I think a guy that really sold me resold me because I was all in on him as a prospect. He had a great rookie year and then hit the wall, and it's Alec Bohm, right? One of my favorite prospects when he was coming up. I compared him to DJ LeMahieu. I loved the swing. I thought the power would continue to come, and I just love the approach. We saw what he did in 2020. We know all about the ebbs and flows. We've talked about them. He finished the year really strong. The defense continued to get better. And I know statistically speaking, the postseason, it wasn't the sexiest performance for him. He hit 224, 292, 362. But what I saw from him at bats wise, what I saw from him comfort wise in the big spots, the discipline, both defensively, offensively on that big stage, he was one of the guys that I was hoping to see up at the plate outside of the obvious, outside of their core, mashers. Bohm was the guy that I wanted up there more than Castellanos, more than, some of the other options in the back half of the lineup. Bohm's here to stay, man. And this is a big building block for the Phillies, who are a little bit older, definitely still have that window. But for the young talent, the young position players, Bohm's a big part of that. This was a huge year for his development to start slow, finish great, get the experience in the postseason, get the experience in the World Series. And I'm really excited to see how Alec Bohm, transitions into next year and continues to build off of this big time 25-year-old season.
Only spot you really got to fill is in the middle infield for the Phillies next year, because you got Schwarber, Hoskins, Realmuto, Harper, Castellanos is the top five. Then you've got Alec Bohm at third. Brandon Marsh, he's the center fielder of the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean, he proved that this postseason, he's the guy there. And then you've got three middle infielders to plug and play: Stott, Edmundo Sosa, Nick Maton at second and short. I like that. Could you get better? Could you pick up Segura's option at second base? You absolutely could. I'm not sure if they do it or not, but this is a team in a really good spot. I think if you're going to spend anywhere, and we know that they're spending already, you got to get more starting pitching because Syndergaard's off the books here. You would like a fourth because you're obviously going to pick up the club option on Nola. You've got Wheeler. You've got Ranger Suarez. After that, it's Bailey Falter. And then as of right now, according to Fangraphs, it's Michael Plasmeyer and Christopher Sanchez. That ain't going to play.
But they do have like some legit pitching prospects in their system. Mick Abel, Andrew Painter, who I want to hear you kind of talk about more because I think Phillies fans are definitely excited for them to come up. But I think the most fascinating question in the Phillies offseason is, do they dip their toes in this incredible shortstop market that is headlined by Carlos Correa, Trey Turner, Dansby Swanson, Xander Bogaerts, and then maybe move Bryson Stott to second?
Yeah.
Armin, I want to hear you talk about Bryson Stott, the prospect at shortstop, because from what I've seen, it seems like the only thing limiting him, because I do think he's a good defender, but I think the arm is a little bit questionable. It's still fine. It's not a bad arm or anything. But do you think it might make sense to go and make the big splash at the shortstop position, move Stott over to second? Because I like Gene Segura, but I just don't know if Gene Segura factors into their long-term plans, because it's not like Gene Segura. I know he had that big hit in the beginning of the playoffs, but I don't know if moving forward, it's like, wow, he just proved everything that he definitely deserves to be the second baseman of the future. He's getting a little bit older. The second base market isn't as vast when you have a guy like Bryson Stott who could be your second baseman for the next decade and then go get a Dansby or a Xander Bogaerts. I want to hear not only about Bryson Stott as a shortstop prospect, possibly more over second, but then like, what do the Phillies have in reserve at the starting pitching?
No, I love where you're going there because that's something I was going to float too, right? I mean, I love Segura, and I think it's one of the tougher. Usually options are cut and dry, right? Like, no way I'm picking that up, or absolutely I'm picking that up. It's usually not a tough decision. $17 million for Gene Segura is really tough. Ultimately, I say no because of the things that Peter just said. Like, you have the shortstop market that's loaded. You plug Stott over to second, and I like Stott's glove. That was probably the biggest question was, how much power in the glove. He's shown that he can hit for at least big league average power. I think he's got a little bit more, especially with the short porch and right. The glove has gotten a lot better, but his ceiling is limited defensively. The difference between a Dansby Swanson and a Bryson Stott at short is going to be very wide. The difference between even some of these other above average defenders for a long time and Stott is going to be, at least noticeable. You move him to second, he's an elite defender. And you take that $17 million that you save annually from Segura, put that towards shortstop, because they're also, you talk about, I don't know how much they committed to Syndergaard. I don't think it was that much in terms of how much they really ended up taking on there. But you look at Kyle Gibson off the books for $8 million. You look at some of these other deals, they're going to be either coming off the books cheaper or whatever it may be. They're going to probably free up about $25-30 million this offseason if they decline that option, and then also can move Stott over. Andrew Painter's ready to go, I think, early next year. People were even floating the idea of adding him to the postseason roster, which was ridiculous. Wow. But I think he's going to be ready to go.
Wait, is it ridiculous because you think it's way too early, or
too
it's
early
ridiculous because it's coming into your mind? You're like, maybe you could because he's that good.
I deadass think he could have come out of the pen and thrown 101 and just
That's what I'm saying. Is it ridiculous because
he's
still not ready, or is it ridiculous because of how incredible he is?
Both. I think both, but I would say they're in a really good spot. And now that you see what Eflin can do, is that a guy that you slide into the rotation? What's cool is they have these malleable pieces.
I think Eflin's got an option, by the way.
Is it mutual or is it player or is it team?
I think it's club.
So I mean,
it's a mutual. It's a $15 million mutual option.
Oh,
you pick me. No.
So you turn that down. That frees up another 5 points. Why the fuck does he have that option?
Because he was a starter.
Jesus Christ. Okay. But you free up another 5.5 there then. I'm really interested to see how this all goes, but I think Peter's on the right track here. I'm with him. You're going to have that money to commit towards shortstop. Pick up one starter. The market's kind of deep there. You got your youngsters and Mick Abel, and they've got other guys too that all could factor in on the pitching side. I like what they've got going on here, and the Phillies are going to be tough for a little bit. This isn't a flash in the pan, in my opinion.
If I'm the Phillies, Dansby is number one, because not only does it add a ton of defense, which the Phillies could definitely use, but you take him from the Braves. I would give him a big big contract.
Be so
You
funny.
get Dansby, and who was also is so good. Like I'm pretty bought in on this kid. Like I think, you know, he's the number 1 overall pick for a reason. I know I'm calling him a kid.
He's
I
28.
think I'm younger. I'm younger. But for some reason he seems younger. Does he not seem younger than that?
Not at all. He seems
Well,
28.
to you maybe. But I'm actually curious, Jack, have you seen Mick Abel or Andrew Painter when you've been calling games? Like, have you been able to watch them head on?
Not in person, but I've watched a lot of Andrew Painter.
No, I know. I was just curious if you called games like with them and, you know, had any.
No.
Well, get better.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll try and work for several minor league teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bounce around.
Yeah, bounce around.
No, so do you like the idea of like a Griff McGarry filling spots for them?
He walks too many guys. I think McGarry could be really good, but I think he walked more than 5 per 9 last year.
Hans Kraus.
Oh, no.
Okay. So that's the problem. You've got Abel Painter, and we talk about this, you know, the rotational prospects coming, but after Abel and Painter, there's not much going on.
No, they got to go
good. If the Yankees had Abel and Painter, like I'd be over the moon.
Yeah, but the Yankees have better depth than the Phillies do.
Yeah,
so we have all shortstops, which is great.
So what'd you say the rotation is right now?
Rotation right now, it's like they're gonna pick up the option on Nola. So it's Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, Falter, and then Michael Plasmeyer.
Yeah, sign one guy and you're okay.
Sign one guy, like a shorter term deal for one guy. Like,
yep.
Wouldn't like a Quintana make sense here? A Quintana type guy makes sense. Bassett will probably command a bit more money than I think they would put towards a starting pitcher. Like Bassett's going to be a 3-year deal, right? I think you can get a guy on a 2-year deal worth about $7 million annually. Like 2 years, 14.
Quintana's going to get more than that. You saw how good he was? He was the number 1 pitcher on the Cardinals.
Is Quintana going to get more than 2 years, 14?
Right?
Yeah, he'll get more than 214.
Yeah, it has to.
Think so?
Bro, Zach Eflin has a $15 million option. He's getting more than that. Also, forgot
to get a $200 million deal.
Yes.
Forgot to mention
going to get more than Dansby.
Forgot to mention Scott Kingery. He's owed $8 million. He's owed $8.25 million next year. They tried the pre-arb deal with him, 6 years, $24 million in 2018. And if you ever wonder why players take those deals, because we only remember the good players who like end up panning out really well and like, oh, why'd he take that deal? Scott Kingery, it might not work for him. I hope he figures it out. Doesn't look like it's going to. And he's got 24 in the bank because he took that deal. So there's an example the other way.
Yeah, it's Kingery, it's Paul DeYoung,
Evan White,
David Bodie, John Singleton. Yeah, a lot of these.
Like,
they gave Bodie one of those deals?
Yeah, like 7 years, 35 or something.
Remember that home run? Remember that grand slam?
I was going to say the grand slam. That was it.
That was worth it. That was worth it. I mean, you paid $35 million for that. That was the most electric home run I've ever seen.
That was absolutely fire. Brad Hand also freeing up $6 million.
5 for 15 for David Bodie. So he's got 15.
Good for him.
He's got a club option at $7 million in 2025.
So that's under the bucket of fuck no when I was talking about the polarization of options.
Correct. He makes $4 million next year. He makes $5.5 in 2024. But we got to talk about another deal. Edwin Diaz is the first reliever in Major League history to ink a 9-figure deal. First guy at $100 million. And it was 5 years, $100 million?
102.
102. Okay. I was going to say nice round numbers, but 5 for 102 makes it a little wonky. All in all, Steve Cohen, this doesn't hurt him.
No.
They had the funds to do this. If Edwin Diaz was wearing another uniform and they were playing narco at another ballpark, it wouldn't feel right, and Mets fans would be MFing Steve Cohen. Their hands were tied in a great way. It was like, we got to get Edwin Diaz back. They did it, and he has deserved to be the new market setter among relief pitchers, surely.
Yes. So I was at the Jets Bills game on Sunday, and we all got the alert, and my immediate reaction was, what a dumbass move. 5 years, 102, like for a reliever. Remember the Chapman deal? How's that working out? And that was 5 years, 86, and he signed around the same age as Diaz. I think he was a year older. The Zach Britton contract. Zach Britton at the time almost won the Cy Young Award. That's how good he was. So I thought, okay, well, this contract is another one that's going to age like milk. He's 28 years old, going to be 29. It's a 5-year deal for a reliever that relies on really, really high velocity. Like, how is that going to work out? But then, I immediately had that reaction to my friends who are Mets fans also, as well as Jets. And they said it literally doesn't matter. Like, you understand, like with Steve Cohen, like he probably made that in the time of the negotiations. It came to make that deal with Edwin Diaz. Like, so it's so tough, right? It's evaluating this contract like in a vacuum versus if the Minnesota Twins signed Edwin Diaz to a 5-year, $102 million deal, we think, wow, that's going to age horribly. But for the Mets, it doesn't seem to matter. That's why they're playing on a different field. So in Aram, you made that TikTok and you were explaining it, where if we're comparing it to other teams, yeah, it doesn't make sense. But for the Mets, it doesn't really matter. And, that's what they were saying to me. And I was like, I guess, yeah, it doesn't matter. Sure. Like, for all those on YouTube, I don't even know what Jack's doing right now.
Steve Cohen paid $141 million for this 6-foot tall statue of a guy that I couldn't even tell you what's going on. Like, there are no facial features. I don't know how old it is.
Kind of looks like Andrew Painter.
He paid $141 million for a 6-foot tall stick figure statue.
I made something just like that for my mom in 3rd grade.
Yes, exactly. With macaroni. Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. So that's a perfect example, though. And I mean, for him, it's also, from that perspective, it's an investment too in the fan base, which I really do think the Mets made big strides in recapturing a lot of the fan base. And I know the Mets fan base is very passionate and they never lost most of them. But anecdotally, I spoke to a lot of Mets fans throughout the year that said, like, this team reeled me back in. And the disappointing postseason, I don't think is enough to put them off, because this was a really fun year to be a Mets fan. And Edwin Diaz was a big part of that. And looking at it from that perspective too, how many people were going to the ballpark hoping for a save opportunity so that they can, see the whole performance when Edwin Diaz comes in, not only for the entrance, but also on the mound. He was the best show on the mound a lot of days because of how nasty he was and how dominant he was. So to kind of go off of what Peter was saying, there's a few reasons why I think it's worth it for them, from a business standpoint, from a baseball standpoint. And then beyond that, I mean, it really is about the money. And when you have a guy like Steve Cohen, it's like if Jeff Bezos overpays for the Commanders. Is anyone going to give a shit? Doesn't matter. Let's say Jeff Bezos pays 30% over asking price. No one's going to be like, oh, what a bad purchase. Yeah. Could be the worst purchase ever. It doesn't matter. There's still going to be a utility from it. It's not like it's better than the stick figure purchase. Yeah. The one thing that surprised me, player option 2026, full no trade clause as well. I would have thought that the 5-year deal for a reliever would be enough, but they really had to sweeten the deal here and there with the player option and the full no trade clause, which that's a lot for a reliever.
And it was $16 million more than the other highest. Aroldis Chapman, 5 years, 86. This was 5 years, 102. It wasn't 87 million. It wasn't the Francisco Lindor $1 more million than Fernando Tatis. It was funny. I was like, because I was arguing back and forth with these Mets fans. I was like, if you're going to pay him the most money, why not give him 5 years, 90? And then they made a funny joke. It was like, I bet in the negotiation room, Steve Cohen goes up to Edwin Diaz. Is like, let's flip a coin. If it's tails, you get 5 years, 87. If it's heads, you get 5 years, 102. And Edwin Diaz is like, sure. And then it probably still landed on the side of Edwin Diaz. He's like, you know what? Screw it. I just made another $12 million in the time that we were flipping the coin. So I'll just give it to you anyway. Like, that's why I was just like, what's the point here of just way overpaying? But then again, it's Steve Cohen and he has all the money in the world. So whatever. It'll probably work in the first 2 seasons. I was telling him, I was like, let's revisit this in 2025 and see where Edwin Diaz's velocity is at and see if you still rely on him in the playoffs.
Problem is, what are you going to do? Offer him 2 years for 66. And when he says no to that, because he wants a 5-year deal, you say damn, because when he puts together another reliever of the year season next year, Mets fans are going to be looking at you like, you piece of shit. You let this guy walk?
But we know that we've done this. We've recorded about 340 Just Baseball show was projected play. One of the main themes of what we talk about is reliever contracts and how relievers grow on trees, and that you can kind of plug and place relievers and grow them. But I don't know.
Edwin Diaz doesn't grow on trees. Let's make that
you're right.
very
You're right.
clear.
You're right.
Yeah, he does. He's Andres Munoz.
It's a good point.
8 of the top 10 relievers in F4 in baseball this year made 2.6 million or less, and several more of those made the minimum.
How many of those were pre-arb though?
But that's kind of my point. Is most when they're not in pre-arb or when they're not in arbitration anymore, then you just recycle and do it again. Like it's only some organizations that can do that though, right? Like you got orgs like. Even the Mets, they haven't really developed bullpen arms the way some other teams have. And I think acknowledging that, it's important to lock up your guys. If you're the Astros, if you're the Rays, if you're the Guardians, if you're some of these other teams, unless it's a really team-friendly pre-arb deal like Class A, you don't need to lock those guys up. But I will say, like the Mets, how many relievers have they really developed? So I can understand the even more willingness to lock those guys up. So Seth Lugo, yeah.
Did they even develop him? Where'd he come from?
I think they did develop
RPM curveball.
I think Seth Lugo's just kind of been hanging around in New York / Syracuse.
You think he's a Mets Hall of Famer?
I hope so. I was at Tom Glavine's jersey retirement with the Mets. That's they gave him like a speedboat. I hope they give Seth Lugo a speedboat. That'd be
Seth Lugo came up. He was a 34th round pick out of Centenary College of Louisiana in Shreveport, Louisiana in 2011.
That's a baseball
2011. He had a 5.57 ERA at Centenary.
That's good scouting.
That is good scouting.
Now he's got like a 4 ERA in the bigs.
I mean, it's really impressive, honestly. Given where he was, that's insanely impressive.
What I will say is, I don't know, Aram and I, you and I were both talking to Taylor Davis, again, catcher that's had a cup of coffee in the bigs with the Cubs, with the Pirates, I think with Baltimore as well. And Taylor, previous guest on the Just Baseball show, but he made a great point to us. He said the best players at each position have this burden not only to get generational wealth, but to reset the market. And that's what Edwin Diaz just did. He reset the market. You look at it in football. Lamar Jackson, he's going to reset the market this year, right? Like the true dual threat quarterback, they're all going to point to the Lamar Jackson contract next time they hit the negotiating table. That's the thing, man. So Emmanuel Clase, when his deal's up, or, Devin Williams, maybe when his deal up, or the next big reliever deal, whoever's in line for a massive payday, they're not pointing to Raisel Iglesias. They're not even pointing to Aroldis Chapman anymore. They're pointing to the Edwin Diaz deal and saying, that's what that guy got. Compare me to him, and you tell me my value, because I think I'm close to that.
It's such a good point, Jack, because do you think Steve Coe did that on purpose a little bit?
Drive the price up for everybody else.
The price up for Class A.
Pay your best reliever $102 million. It's only going to hurt you. It ain't going to hurt me.
That's the thing, man. I mean, like you look at these supermax deals for like NBA guys. Like you look at what Jokic just got paid, and like Morant. I mean, Morant was salivating when that happened, right? When Wembanyama gets in the league, he's going to be looking at some of these mega deals, and he's going to say, "All right, as soon as I can sign this max, I'm in, man. Let's go." Like that's the thing. I mean, you push the boundaries each chance you get if you're the best at your position. Edwin Diaz is the best relief pitcher in baseball. He needed to push the boundaries financially of what was seen as plausible for a reliever, and Steve Cohen blew past that with an $102 million deal. So now it's on everybody else. It's on this new ownership group with Cleveland to pony up and pay Class A when he hits the open.
Well, you got paid already.
Yeah, that's true.
When did he get
paid? You got paid already. You got the pre-arb.
Emmanuel Clase got the pre-arb?
Yeah. Where were you?
When the fuck did this happen?
Where were 5 years, 20 mil, King, with 2 club options on the back end for 10 million.
When did this happen?
You didn't know? Were you under a rock?
You're kidding me. I was probably man, I have no idea where I was.
The breakdown on the Class A deal, which is crazy. I mean, and again, like to make the point, because everyone's probably like, whoa, why'd they take that? Why would he take that? Look at Scott Kingery. Who knows what can happen to your arm? Who knows what can happen? Anyway, he makes 1.5 next year, 2.5 in 2024, 4.5 in 2025. Then he makes $6 million in 2026. Then on the back end, 2 club options at 2027 and 2028 for 10 mil each, which they'd presumably pick up unless he falls flat on his face. So he'll hit free agency at age 30 and still have an opportunity to sign a pretty nice deal if he's still doing what he does. Perfect deal for both sides. And that's what Cleveland did.
He signed this shit on April 7th and nobody fucking talked about it. What? I had no idea. That's crazy.
I think you literally recorded an episode on it, dude.
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah, I'd bet my life we did.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm letting the team down.
It's good. It's good radio though to go over it and have you kind of confused.
He can earn $3 million in escalators as well.
I feel very Mike Francesa-like right now, where I say something and just forget it. Damn.
I'm gonna dig up a text of you like shooting to me like, wow, what an interesting deal.
Yeah, just look up Emmanuel Class A in your iMessages. And I bet Jack on April 7th, it's like, Emmanuel Class A signed the pre-arb deal. Let's
like Jack sent me actually like Jack sent me a full page of analysis on the deal. Actually, he just doesn't remember it.
I think you wrote an article.
Okay, I guess I'm due for a nap today. I don't know. Yeah. What else we got to hit?
I don't know what else we got.
Should we talk about Jose Urquidy for Wilson Contreras?
Yeah, I mean, we could circle back and wrap a bow on that whole thing. Yeah, Jeff Passan reported that there was a 1-for-1 deal agreed upon by front offices between the Cubs and the Astros, which was Jose Urquidy straight up for Wilson Contreras. You might think, wait, those players are nowhere near comparable. Well, yes, of course. But Wilson Contreras was an expiring player that was about to be a free agent. So it was 2 mid-level prospects, or maybe 1 fringe top 100 prospect, or Jose Urquidy. What I will say is we can talk about whether they should have done it or not or whatever. And I think both teams theoretically should have done it. But you guys brought up a good point about Martin Maldonado, which I'll let you guys get to that. The one thing I will say is I think it's indicative of what the Cubs are planning to do and what the Cubs view their timeline as. And that's the one thing I took away from that is when they were making trades a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they were going for low-level prospects in the highest upside possible. Look at the Yu Darvish return. It was a bunch of 18-year-olds. You look at a bunch of the other trades that they made. It was a bunch of teenagers. Now they're looking at Jose Urquidy, a guy that they could have plugged straight into their rotation next year. A lot of the other players that they've been looking at seems like it fits more the timeline of competing next year or the year after that. I think the Cubs are going to be kind of sneaky with what they're going to do this offseason. And I do believe that the Cubs window is in the next 2 years and they're going to try to be competitive next year. But crazy that the Astros owner was the one that ended up reportedly nixing the deal.
Yeah, the reason what shot out to me the most about it was, firsthand, you think to yourself, well, who's better, Wilson Contreras or Jose Urquidy? And Wilson Contreras is an all-star catcher, really good behind the plate, but even the bat is really what you're buying for Jose Urquidy, who, if he was never on the Astros, I don't think they would have noticed. And it's not because Jose Urquidy isn't good, but it speaks to their depth, the starting pitching and their bullpen. But I think really what it was is this team is in love with Martin Maldonado. They don't even need him to hit. The way he can mold a starting rotation, the way he can act as a second pitching coach, that's what Arm said in pre-recording. I couldn't agree more, and that's why I wanted to use that. They value his defense so highly that this is at least my thinking here, that they felt that they were trading Martin Maldonado and Jose Urquidy for Wilson Contreras. So when they got Christian Vasquez, Click might have been thinking, we're going to use Vasquez a lot. But I think Dusty, seeing what Martin Maldonado does for a Framber, does for a Christian Javier, does for a Luis Garcia, does for a Hunter Brown, does for Jose Urquidy, he thought to himself, we can't use this guy. This guy is so much more valuable than what the stats might say. And again, like Jose Urquidy, he's not the sexiest pitcher in the world, but in 2019, 3.95 ERA, 2020, 2.73, 2021, 3.62, 2022, 3.94. He's never had a season above a 4 ERA. Like, I think it's kind of funny to make fun of him because he doesn't look like the best pitcher in the world.
But on any other team, we're like solid, serviceable big league starter.
Exactly. Like, he's 217 pounds. He doesn't throw hard, but he gets outs. Like, he is a solid starting pitcher that you're trading for an expiring catcher. So if you just look at the name value, you think to yourself, well, that was dumb. Why didn't the Astros do that? But then if you take context into it, it's like, I totally understand why they didn't do it. I really do.
So, welcome to the Houston Astros, where a billionaire is concerned over a guy that hits like $170. Right? Hey, we
But
can't take
kinda
this
right.
dude. He's kind of right. And they're into it, man. I mean, Houston's becoming a cast of characters with Click and Dusty, but also like Jim Crane and fucking Mattress Mac. I mean, oh my God, the Houston Astros have it right.
I can't decide if I've had enough of Mattress Mac or not.
I like him.
I like him, but
personally.
I don't know if I've had enough yet.
You know why I like him? Because
Because he gambles and you gamble.
no, it's not.
Sorry,
even
you
that,
don't
but
gamble.
It is sort of because of that. Because in the gambling sphere, there's a lot of scumbags. There's a lot of people who claim that they bet this much money and then
Are
they
you
really
one of them?
don't. No, I am a not gambler. I'm a not
Fair.
gambler.
Yeah.
But with Mattress Mac, he seems so pure. Like he seems
he
like
does
such
seem
a
very
nice
pure.
guy too. And he's not like scummy. He's not in your face. He just roots for his team. And then on the outside makes the biggest bets in the history of gambling and
genius
walks away with
marketer.
$75 million. Genius marketer. So it's like, yes. Is he all over your social media screen? Yes. Does
Yeah,
it
you gotta
get
tip
a
your
little
cap,
bit
though.
annoying because every single media wants to just push him
Yeah.
out there and show how amazing this is. But frankly,
No,
it
you're
is
right.
amazing. And at least I feel, and maybe this is untrue, but I haven't heard anything bad about him, that he does seem like a really nice guy.
No, it seems
And I
like
think it's like it's a fun thing too. So while
No.
it's a lot, I do enjoy. Maybe
Well, you know why it's fucking a lot? Because the Astros are always in it, and then he can always
Exactly.
do this fucking promo. He's
Yeah.
so lucky that this baseball team right there is a fucking dynasty. Last thing I'll say on Urquidy though is that they'll probably look into trading him again, right? Like he is so not essential for them, and I assume
but still good.
But he probably wants to start. For them, he's a middle reliever. Luis Garcia is a guy I'm putting in the rotation before him, obviously. A couple other guys. I'd put Hunter Brown in the rotation before Urquidy. So
How can you not? He looks like Mini Verlander.
So who are they going to shop him for? How are the Astros going to somehow turn Urquidy and Jake Myers and somebody else into another really good player and ruin it for everybody else? But I'm interested to see how that's going to go. And it's interesting because I think we're going to have a lot of really good coverage through the off season. We're working on our free agent profiles. We're working on our top 25 free agents with predictions and all of that good stuff, which is all going to be live at justbaseball.com. But we're already kind of seeing the stove get rolling. I mean, to see the Diaz deal done, we even saw a trade, Sam Hilliard going from the Rockies to the Braves, which doesn't really matter, but a trade happened. Like, we're already seeing the stove heat up. And again, like as Jack alluded to in the beginning of the episode, this is where we really have fun, where we really feel like we can thrive with our coverage. And we'll have you all off season long with no walkout in between, covering, the free agency, trades, and basically everything you can want from an off season.
I am going to toot our own horn right now. I think we play the what if game as well as anybody out there. We love playing the what if game. And that is what the offseason is.
Hypotheticals. That's what we're best, I think. Hypotheticals.
Yeah, I love the hypotheticals. So, like, we're wrapping up the top 25 free agents tomorrow. Peter, I'm telling you what I would like to talk about on the episode tomorrow. I have written up Dansby Swanson and Xander Bogaerts in the last 24 hours. I would like to talk about the free agent shortstop mark. I would like to key in on those guys. If you want to read those two articles, we'll talk about those two articles. That's what we can do. We've got so much editorial stuff happening at Just Baseball. We're going to have 30 offseason outlooks for 30 teams, and we're going to have 25 full free agent looks. So we're going to be bringing on writers all offseason to talk about what they've done, because they are spending the hours doing the digging, so you do not have to, and you just have to go read a 7-minute article, and we're going to have them on to have conversations. Lots of interviews this offseason. Lots of good conversation with players. Players like conversing when they ain't got shit to do. And guess what? They ain't got shit to do in the offseason. So you're going to hear from players and shit.
And man, I don't want to ruin it, but we might have the greatest interview ever in baseball history, possibly coming soon.
Oh, we'll see.
That's all I'm going to say.
We shall see. But yeah, Just Baseball is going to thrive this offseason. And if you're a fan of the stove, no other spot.
I agree. And still doing some football stuff too. So if you're interested in any football stuff, obviously not gambling advice, we have our Just Gridiron TikTok page as well. Possibly some basketball stuff maybe in the works too. College basketball. I know Jack and Arm love the NBA, love college basketball a little bit more than me. So it's going to be a great offseason, full of coverage. We're planning on doing the Just Baseball show. We've gotten a lot of questions, and also we got a lot of DMs too, just saying of how we were able to kind of help bring you closer, the listener, to the game of baseball. And like some of these DMs just made me tear up, and they were talking about Jack and Arm too. I mean, it was great to see, and we're going to keep doing it. We're probably going to do 4 episodes a week instead of the 5, maybe take 1 off day. It's most likely going to be us 3 on a Friday episode, Jack and Arm coming at you on Mondays, Jack and I coming at you on Tuesdays, off day Wednesday, Arm and I probably doing Thursdays, and then the 3 of us on Fridays. Ton of off-season coverage. Like, we're not going to stop, and we hope you don't stop listening, and we greatly appreciate you listening. And our code for merch is still live, October 15. Get yourself some Just Baseball merch. It's getting a little chilly. How about getting yourself a little sweatshirt? Maybe
new hoodies,
maybe a long sleeve, new hoodies.
New hoodies just got in.
New hoodie drop. Check that out through the link in our episode description. So we got everything coming for you. And with that, thank you, everybody.